Los Extra Value Meals están de regreso. Ahora te puedes llevar 10 jugosos McNuggets y papitas medianas y una bebida por solo $8 en McDonald's. Solo por tiempo limitado. Precios y participación pueden variar. Los precios pueden ser más altos en Hawaii, Alaska y California y con entrega.
Join me, Danny Trejo, in Nocturnal, Tales from the Shadows. An anthology of modern-day horror stories inspired by the legends and lore of Latin America. Listen to Nocturnal, Tales from the Shadows on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
When we arrived at the small hotel, we were the only guests, and they showed us the room. The floor was made of very old wood that creaked when you stepped on it. It looked like the setting of a horror movie. When the man at the reception gave us the keys, he warned us that if we went out and returned to the hotel at night, no matter what happened, we should go straight to the room.
Mazamitla, Jalisco, Mexico. A magical town in the heart of the Sierra del Tigre, surrounded by forests that seem infinite, and mountains that wrap themselves in mist every dawn, known as the Mexican Switzerland. It is one of those places that seem taken from a postcard. Cobblestone streets, little houses with tile roofs, the smell of pine in the air, and cabins that invite you to stay, from the most modest to the most luxurious. It is a place that everyone who has the opportunity should visit at least once in their lifetime. But as usually happens in places with so much history and so much nature around them, Mazamitla also holds another face, that of legends. In its streets, in its forests, in the same cabins where tourists come to rest, stories are told of apparitions, of strange voices that come from the forest at night, of presences that seem to watch or lurk from the darkness. Simply inexplicable events where time seems to pass differently. Of course, there are legends that have been passed down from generation to generation, but there are also those stories, those recent encounters with the paranormal, documented, that visitors share with fear. After investigations carried out by members of the community, there are not few who assure that there, in Mazamitla, occurs one of the most popular stories from Tales of the Night, the cabin in the forest. And although that has never been confirmed, so many videos and comments about it ended up causing many people to start commenting on it on TikTok. And we found that now there are a large number of people outside the community, even without knowing about our stories of the cabin in the forest, nor about the ones we have come to tell. They began to share on that platform and on others their experiences in the cabins of Mazamitla. Many of those stories have reached us, some even without the names of those who have told them. But we believe it is time to share them, because perhaps we are facing one of the spaces with the most paranormal activity in Mexico. You are listening to Tales of the Night. Some time ago, I went with some friends to a cabin somewhat far from town. They told us that the nearest store was 15 minutes away, so we decided to go around 5 o'clock in the afternoon when there was still sun. We walked, but we didn't get anywhere. An hour later, we arrived at an area with houses, but there was no one. We entered a store that looked very old and full of dust, and decided not to buy anything there. We moved forward a bit more, and arrived at another store, where they told us that indeed, the cabin where we were staying was 15 minutes away. We thought we had gotten lost somehow, but that the return would be different. However, on the way back we took another hour, and returned when it was completely dark. Some friends had stayed at the cabin and a girl had gone out to look for them. She said that when she walked, she arrived at that same town where it seemed almost abandoned, that she arrived in 15 minutes, but that when she entered she heard children's laughter, from children she couldn't see, and it scared them, so she returned. The strange thing is that we never found each other, despite the fact that there was only one path to get there and on the sides there was only forest. I went to Mazamitla when they had just lifted the restrictions due to COVID, and they were just beginning to open tourist spaces. I stayed in a hotel that is behind the church. I don't remember the name, but it was very old. When we arrived, we were the only guests and they showed us the room. The floor was made of very old wood that creaked when you stepped on it. When the man gave us the keys, he warned us that if we arrived at night, we should go straight to the room. That night, we returned from dinner around 11:30, and we were chatting when we began to hear footsteps in the room, footsteps of something we couldn't see, but that seemed to walk about 1 meter from us very slowly. We tried to convince ourselves that it was because of the old floor and the temperature changes. The strange thing was that with the light off, inside the bathroom it sounded as if something metal was rolling in the tub. Out of fear, we didn't get up until dawn. When we checked in the morning, we found an oxidized coin there. I took it because I had seen a fountain in the courtyard and thought about throwing it there. When I handed in the key, the receptionist asked me where I had gotten the coin from. I told him from the bathroom, and he replied that those old coins could only be found in the well, because people a long time ago used to throw them there. Hello, Uriel in the Tales of the Night community. My name is Carlos. I am a great follower of your YouTube channel, and with each episode I always feel the need to write you a story that happened to me, along with several friends and my brother some years ago. As a skeptical person, this was my moment to understand that there are very strange things, but above all, as you mention in several stories, we must have respect for the things we don't know. This is a story that several people can tell and that we always agree on because it happened to all of us. In Mazamitla. Everything began in 2010. Several friends and I decided to rent a cabin in Mazamitla, Jalisco, which is a little over an hour from Guadalajara. We wanted to rest and spend the long weekend there. At that time we were all students, so we had to look for a cheap place to spend those days. We were a total of 12 people and we got a cabin with 3 bedrooms, 1 downstairs where 3 slept and 2 upstairs, where the rest of us settled. The first day everything was very good, but something strange did happen. We left our things in the rooms and went out to eat. Only one friend stayed to bathe, and he says that while he was brushing his teeth, he managed to see in the bathroom mirror someone pass behind him. The bathroom had a mirror from which you could see the cabin stairs. He didn't want to dwell on that, although there was no one else in the cabin anymore, and he simply ignored it. And the day continued as if nothing had happened. At night, already with some drinks, alcohol on top, we began to tell horror stories, but more than anything to make fun. And then we started almost daring that if there was something, that it would manifest itself, that something would happen so we could believe. We had that typical bravery that the party among friends gives. What a mistake. As you can imagine, that same night another friend who was sleeping alone with his girlfriend saw how, with the moonlight, the silhouette of a person formed on one side of the bed, as if there was someone standing watching them sleep. He got so scared that he covered himself with the blanket like when we are children. The next day, we went for a walk to the town and the waterfall. We were out for about 3 or 4 hours. When we returned, we realized that the cabin was open. We argued about whether someone had forgotten to lock it, but the strangest thing was that all the doors in the cabin, refrigerator, cupboard, bathrooms, kitchen, all were open, as if someone had come in to steal. But nothing was missing. All the things were still there. Even my laptop that I had left on the table, because I had to turn in an assignment on Monday. Late at night, we were all gathered in the living room drinking beer and tequila, with a festive atmosphere still, but definitely without any desire to challenge anything anymore. When in the upstairs bathroom we heard someone flush the toilet, we all fell silent except me, who for some reason shouted, "Stop it already!" It was my way of making fun of everything that was happening to try to downplay it, so we wouldn't lose control. But no one laughed. No one reacted. As much as we wanted to avoid it, fear was already quite established among us. That night, while we were sleeping, a friend saw how someone entered the large bedroom upstairs, where 7 of us were in bunk beds. He said that silhouette approached me. It stayed by my side for a moment. It leaned toward me and then left. I didn't feel anything because I'm a very heavy sleeper. But when my friend told me the next day, the only thing I had to say was, "Well, for next time, wake me up, please." The second day was calmer. We ate in town, rode horses, and there was a strong argument. About money, I think. But the third night arrived, that damned third night. By that point, we were already trying to joke about the things that had happened, and we said that each day was worse than the previous one. In fact, since Paranormal Activity had just premiered, I don't know if you remember it, we commented that it seemed like we were living the movie, but nothing prepared us for what happened that night. We all went to sleep, and because of what had happened previous nights, we decided to lock the bedroom door. It would be around 3 o'clock in the morning when, between dreams, I heard someone calling me in a low voice. Carlos, wake up." I woke up and saw it was my friend. He told me, "Someone wants to come into the room." I looked at the door and saw how the handle turned little by little until the door began to open slowly. Fear paralyzed me. I only managed to speak to another friend to prepare ourselves. "Luis, open your eyes." He woke up and saw the door and only said, "Who wants to come in?" Then the door stopped moving and a strange calm invaded the room. Seconds later, I heard how something or someone ran down the stairs, hitting the wall with fury. The sound was so loud that it seemed to rumble throughout the entire cabin. That lasted at least 30 seconds, until the bathroom window slammed and sounded like it shattered into pieces. This time everyone woke up. My brother was the first to ask what had happened. I told him someone tried to get into the room. He immediately thought it was a thief, but when he tried to open the door to go out and check, he couldn't move it. The bedroom door was stuck as if someone was pulling from outside. My brother, who was very strong, braced himself with his legs and finally was able to open it. Everyone else got up scared and confused, very afraid. We decided to check the cabin. In a closet we hadn't opened, we found a crucifix almost 1 meter tall, enormous and very detailed. It seemed strange to us, but we decided to place it in the hallway. I don't know. At that moment, we felt it could help us. When we tried to sleep, when I felt the others had fallen asleep, when we had finally quieted down, I heard something inside the room, as if someone was walking between my bed, dragging their feet. I, with fear, closed my eyes tightly and curled up my legs, like when you're a child and hide under the blankets. At that moment, I felt it. I felt how they grabbed my legs and then tried to pull me down, but slowly, as if they didn't want to wake me up. I screamed. You can't imagine how I screamed, and my friends got up running, scared. They turned on the light, but there was nothing. After that, we decided it was better to sleep all squeezed together in the same room. Then the knocking happened down there, next to the door, but inside the cabin, as if someone enraged was hitting the walls. At dawn, while the town was waking up, we heard some dogs barking nonstop toward our house. They didn't do it for minutes, but for almost half an hour. It was as if they knew that something bad was in there with us. Before returning to Guadalajara, we checked the cabin to pick up the glass that had broken, but there was nothing. The bathroom window was intact. The only strange thing was that in the second bedroom, the one we left empty, the blankets, sheets, and pillows were piled up in a corner, as if someone had thrown them there, as if someone had made a nest. That was the last straw. We took our things and left. We didn't want to spend one more minute there. As additional information, those who slept in the downstairs bedroom assure that they saw the silhouette of someone going up the stairs, a detail we only learned about several days later. I hope you can tell this story, and above all, I have wondered if anyone else has experienced something similar in that place.
Los Extra Value Meals están de regreso. Ahora te puedes llevar un delicioso sausage, egg and cheese McGriddles y un hash brown y un café por solo $5 en McDonald's. Solo por tiempo limitado. Precios y participación pueden variar. Los precios pueden ser más altos en Hawaii, Alaska y California y con entrega.
Join me, Danny Trejo, in Nocturnal, Tales from the Shadows. An anthology of modern-day horror stories inspired by the legends and lore of Latin America. Listen to Nocturnal, Tales from the Shadows on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you for continuing here, community. It's very curious. There are few places that have so many stories that support an entire episode. The Mexico City Metro, the Historic Center, and surely there will be others like the Zone of Silence, or in Patagonia. Please tell us, what would be another such special place? Which one are we missing? It would be very nice to find more places with many stories to tell. But for now, it's time to continue. We continue with more stories tonight, and we're going to small experiences that people who saw them on platforms sent us, hoping to delve deeper into them soon. More than 12 years ago, something happened to me in a cabin around there. We were having dinner, and from my place I could see directly toward the window in front of the dining room. Suddenly I saw someone approaching. At first I only distinguished the silhouette, but each time it was closer, approaching the cabin until it went through the window and disappeared. I was in shock, without saying anything, until my sister's friend's mom turned around and said to me, "You saw it, didn't you?" I was scared shitless. It turns out she was a seer, and she explained to us that that spirit had been haunting that cabin for a while. She said it was a young man who had had an accident. He remained wandering. That night we couldn't sleep anymore, and the next day they changed our cabin. I don't know if it was something paranormal or not, but my husband and I went out to walk at night through the forest, and suddenly everything became so thick that we had to turn on the cell phone flashlight. At that moment I felt him squeeze my hand very tightly, and he started pulling me scared and very nervous. It's worth mentioning that he is not at all easily scared, but he was taking me very quickly back, without saying a single word. I had goosebumps, more because of his reaction than anything else, because I hadn't seen anything. Once at the cabin, he confessed to me that among the bushes he saw a humanoid being crouched down, watching us intently. Since we had the flashlight on, the light managed to reflect in its eyes, thinking that at any moment it could get up and start following us. That's why he reacted like that. Just remembering it still gives me goosebumps, although we continue to love going to Mazamitla. On one occasion, when we stayed there, my parents saw the head of a person pass through the lower part of a large window that was almost 3 meters from the floor. The large window faced the cabin's courtyard. My dad and my brother-in-law, who are tall, went out to check if they could look in to verify if someone had broken in, but they still lacked quite a bit to reach that height. We have no idea what it was that appeared. We stayed in a cabin, and the second night we began to feel a strange vibe. During the gathering, a friend started screaming nonstop and crying, pointing out that there was a very strange woman on the stairs. We didn't see anything, but he even fainted. We laid him down, and later, when we tried to sleep, they wouldn't stop knocking on the window. We couldn't sleep because they wouldn't let us. The next morning we left immediately with the first light of day, even though we still had several days paid for. We left everything, even the suitcases. The last time I went to Mazamitla, a friend and I woke up early to walk through the forest in search of a viewpoint that was supposedly nearby. But we never found it, despite following the exact directions. The strange thing was that after a while, we saw a little old lady walking alone in our direction. We thought, what is she doing alone here? When we passed directly in front of her, we greeted her, but she didn't respond. She was carrying several backpacks, a basket, and other things. But the strangest thing was that in one hand she was carrying a plastic bag with a dead animal, something that looked like a cat. After that, and when we lost sight of her, we decided it was better to return. Hello, community. Hello, Uriel. I hope you are the ones who end up judging whether this was paranormal or not. What I can say is that what a group of friends and I experienced in Mazamitla completely changed the way I view stories that I myself used to listen to only for fun. It happened a few years ago. 8 of us rented a cabin, a bit far from downtown because that way it was cheaper. It was 2 stories, made of wood, surrounded by tall pines. During the day it looked like a postcard, I swear. The smell of resin, the sun filtering through the branches, the mist that rose early and made everything look like a movie. But at night it became another place completely. The silence up there is so dense that even the creaking of the wood seems too loud. The first night after dinner we went out for a walk. 3 of us went, 2 friends and I. The rest stayed playing cards and drinking in the living room. I remember very well that the path was narrow, bordered by bushes and shrubs. At first we were just talking and laughing. But then we felt the air get cold, and you could feel it on your face. As if suddenly there was humidity, a strange pressure. We took out the cell phone flashlight and started shining it to the sides. That's when we saw something in the bushes. Just a few meters away there was something crouched down. At first I thought it was an animal, but the shape was too human. Also the hunched torso. The long arms stuck to the body, the head tilted as if observing us. What froze me was when the light moved and managed to hit it directly in the face. I didn't distinguish features, only the eyes that reflected the light as if they were metallic, like those of an animal in the darkness. It didn't move. It didn't retreat. It didn't make any noise. It was just there, waiting. The sensation was immediate. I felt that if we took one more step, it was going to launch at us. We went back. We didn't run, but almost. We didn't want to move fast so as not to generate some reaction from it. We returned to the cabin, walking as fast as we could in silence. When we arrived and closed the door behind us, we breathed as if we had been holding our breath for several minutes. The rest of the group didn't believe us. They said we were suggestible or that surely it was a trunk or a bush that seemed strange to us with the flashlight or some animal. They laughed and changed the subject. And so, after a while, everyone went to sleep in their room. I slept on the second floor with 3 others. We were tired and still a bit nervous, and well, all with some beers on top. So soon we were all half asleep. That's when the worst began. First a very soft knocking, as if someone was tapping with their fingers on the window. I thought it was a branch moved by the wind, but the sound repeated regularly, as if someone was marking the rhythm. One of my friends, the one who was closest to the window, got up annoyed to close the curtain. As soon as he did, he turned pale. I saw him step back and freeze. I asked him what was wrong and he could barely say, "A hand." We approached and for an instant we all managed to see it. A large hand with long fingers, very long, pressed against the glass. It was right at the height of his face as if someone was trying to look in. The impossible thing was that we were on the second floor, several meters high. No one dared to go out and see. The most we could do was run and close the curtain. We pushed the bed against the window and tried to sleep all together with the light on, and no one succeeded. At dawn, we checked outside. The wall was clean. There were no marks or footprints. The window was intact. But the feeling that what we had seen in the forest had followed us is impossible for me to shake off. The 2 friends who went for a walk, and I cut the trip short. We had one more night paid for, but we didn't want to risk it. We packed and returned to Guadalajara as soon as we could. To this day, when I remember that hand pressed on the window, I get the same feeling as that night, that what we saw doesn't stay in the forest. that it accompanied us to the cabin, and that if it had been able to find a way to get in, I think I wouldn't be here telling this story.
Los Extra Value Meals están de regreso. Ahora te puedes llevar un delicioso sausage, egg and cheese McGriddles y un hash brown y un café por solo $5 en McDonald's. Solo por tiempo limitado. Precios y participación pueden variar. Los precios pueden ser más altos en Hawaii, Alaska y California y con entrega.
Join me, Danny Trejo, in Nocturnal, Tales from the Shadows. An anthology of modern-day horror stories inspired by the legends and lore of Latin America. Listen to Nocturnal, Tales from the Shadows on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Oh, community. What I'm going to tell you happened to me several years ago, when I was in university. I was studying literature, and the truth is that at that time I was in a very hippie stage of my life. I trusted people too much. I liked to travel without any plan, improvising, taking what came my way. One weekend, my friends organized a trip to Mazamitla. The plan was to leave altogether, but I couldn't leave at the time we had agreed, and instead of canceling, I thought I could catch up with them little by little by hitchhiking from Zapopan. For me, that was part of the adventure. The first stretches were easy. People picked me up quickly until I reached a point where the road became more lonely, and it started to get dark, and no one would pick me up. When a man finally stopped, I felt very grateful. He was a big, serious man who was carrying merchandise in a very rundown truck. He told me he would take me, that he could get me close to Mazamitla. That was very convenient. The road was still long, but the truck seemed like it was going to break down at any moment. And yes, a few kilometers before arriving, it broke down. We stayed there, in the middle of the road, trying to push and work on the engine. I couldn't leave him alone, although some people who passed offered us a ride, so I stayed helping him as I could until after a couple of hours. I don't know how. I don't know what we moved, but we managed to start it again. We arrived in Mazamitla past 10 o'clock at night. My cell phone had been off for a long time, so there was no way to notify anyone. My friends were waiting for me at 7 at the downtown kiosk, and obviously they were no longer there. I walked for a while looking for where to charge my phone, but everything was closed with people who didn't even seem to give me the opportunity to connect it. That's when I ran into some people who were coming from selling things, pushing a small wooden table with wheels, already on their way back to their house. They were two siblings, a man and a woman in their 30s. I asked them if they knew where I could charge my phone, and without hesitation they told me I could accompany them to their house, that they would help me there, and with all the trust I had in that stage of my life, I simply accepted. As we walked, I asked them if it wasn't strange that a stranger would come with them so late to their house, and the woman who was walking behind with me said quietly that there was no problem, that the two of them had been alone since their mother died, that I could stay as long as I needed, even spend the night if I wanted. Their mother's bed had been empty for a long time. Their house was on the downtown streets. It was old, spacious, and with furniture that seemed not to have been moved in years. I sat at the dining room table, facing a hallway that led to a dark room. They let me plug in my cell phone there. I was talking to them about unimportant things I said without thinking about them while I tried to turn on my cell phone. When suddenly, I heard something, a voice coming from that room behind me, followed by the sound of someone getting up, dragging their feet toward where I was. I didn't want to turn around immediately out of politeness, but before doing so, I saw the face of the woman in front of me. She was pale, with very wide eyes, as if she had seen something terrible. The man got up abruptly and shouted toward the room, "Mom, go back there, please. We'll be there soon." I felt a chill running through me completely. The woman in front of me looked at me as if trying to pretend. She told me with a trembling voice not to pay attention. How was my phone doing? That I could leave it there charging and stay if I wanted. That I could spend the night there. That they would give me something for dinner. But at that moment, my screen turned on. I took advantage to send a quick message to my friends. "I'll see you at the kiosk. Don't leave. I didn't even wait for it to send or for it to charge more. I thanked the siblings and got up to leave. The man tried to stop me. He insisted that I stay a while longer, but I was no longer thinking about staying one more second there. I left practically running. Behind me I heard footsteps. The man came out onto the street shouting at me to wait. The cell phone, as if on purpose, turned off again. I had no choice but to keep running in the darkness. When I arrived at the kiosk, after what seemed like hours to me, my friends were there. They had gone to dinner while giving me time to arrive. They had never moved away from the kiosk, and you can't imagine the relief I felt seeing them. I told them what had happened, although I don't know if they fully believed me. To this day, I keep thinking about that night, about the voice I heard coming from that room, about the way something staggered toward me. Thank you very much for continuing here. Thank you very much for being part of this community. We'll hear from each other very soon with more tales of the night.
Los Extra Value Meals están de regreso. Ahora te puedes llevar 10 jugosos McNuggets y papitas medianas y una bebida por solo $8 en McDonald's. Solo por tiempo limitado. Precios y participación pueden variar. Los precios pueden ser más altos en Hawái, Alaska y California y con entrega.